Good afternoon. Now I have been warned that with my accent, two things happen. One, I talk too quickly, and two, no one can understand me, so this won't take long and no one will have any questions. I'm the manager of EnviroCom in Victoria. We're a waste education consultancy. We're actually part of the J.J. Richards group. We've got offices in Melbourne, which I look after, and also Brisbane and the Sunshine Coast, and one in Sydney. We're on stand 37 these couple of days, and I've got representatives here from Brisbane and Sydney, so if you've got any questions, want to come and talk to us, please do. We deliver a variety of different kinds of waste education and research, and we have a wide variety of work which varies greatly across the states as well. Our offices are very different in many ways. Anything from field-based segregation audits to bin inspections to working in kindergartens with kids to running composting workshops. You name it, we get involved in it. Today I'm going to look at this question around how do we evaluate what we do. So we obviously are running this all the time, and the question is it working? And how do we know it's working? And it's something that we take very seriously at EnviroCom. So a quick overview of what I want to go through today. Apologies if I'm teaching people to suck eggs, but we need to have a look at the difference between qualitative and quantitative evaluation. So we really try and get down to the nitty-gritty of what we're delivering and whether it's working. Then I'm going to give you 3 examples of some waste education that we've delivered recently. Now these examples come from across, some of them are national, some of them are local, some of them are Melbourne-based, one from the Sunshine Coast. So I know quite a lot about the Melbourne one, a little bit less about the Sunny Coast one, but if there are questions, I'll do my best to answer them. I'm going to talk about Maroondah City Council. We worked with them on a MUDS intervention, so multi-unit dwellings, looking at reducing illegal dumping and improving recycling at specific MUDs. Also talk about our own EnviroCom Early Learning Centre kit, which I'll explain a little bit about when I get to. And then the delivery of some community composting and worm farming workshops, which we've been running for about 4 years in the Sunshine Coast. So just very quickly on this particular issue, and this really goes to the nub of what I want to talk about today. It's about going beyond asking how the presentation went. You know, we send along our super smart presenters, and we give out evaluation forms, and everyone does it, and everyone says, yeah, I had a great time, that was fantastic. We send the council a bill or the contractor a bill, and we never hear from them. So it's about going beyond that and saying, well, look, has what we've delivered and what we've done made any real change, and can we measure it at all? So it's about moving away from that qualitative into more quantitative. And we're not always going to get it right, and I'll try and give you some examples today of how we've tried to do that. So this first example, which is Maroondah City Council in southeast suburb of Melbourne. This was looking at reducing illegal dumping, which was a big problem at some of these multi-unit dwellings. And these are sort of low-level multi-unit dwellings, often with shared recycling bins, shared garbage bins in bin corrals, perhaps not very well planned when they were originally constructed. So the first thing we did with this project was we set ourselves some very specific targets. So we really wanted to know exactly what we're looking at, and they're up on the screen behind me. Now, look, it might seem common sense to set specific targets, and it is, but how many projects do people start and they don't do that? And I think that's very important at the beginning. So we wanted to try and reduce the volume of illegal dumping by 50%, reduce our contamination rates for the recycling stream to get it down to the council average in that particular council of 9.6%, and reduce the waste to landfill by 20% by volume. And the last part, which I think is the most important, and I've highlighted that here, is to assess the cost effectiveness of the different interventions that took place. So we tackled these issues differently at each of the sites, and by measuring the improvement in the targets that we had set, we were able to actually put a cost on each intervention. So we then go back to our client and say, you spent X dollars, here's the result. And that's really the important bit about this, and it's shaped the next round of interventions which we're working on at the moment. So what we did was we undertook some pre and post visual inspection audits, where we estimated the metres of dumped waste. Now, these multi-unit dwellings, quite surprisingly, there's a heck of a lot of waste just dumped on the sidewalk. we right? Sorry, something just jumped at me. There's a lot of waste being dumped on footpaths and sidewalks around this area, and that was a real concern for council. It was fairly consistent and fairly repetitive. So we were able to go in and assess over a period of time the volumes of waste being dumped, and we also carried out a number of inspections of the recycling bins as well, and the garbage bins on collection day. So in the end, we had 4 separate education approaches. All the bins have got new recycling bin stickers below the lid because part of it was there's just no information at all, so we did that as a basis. At some of them we installed some sort of flashy whiz-bang bin signage around the bin corrals so that it was really in people's faces what we were doing. Other ones we sent out a mail-out with information in a mail-out pack. And then on one of them we did some door knocking, provided a recycling tray for people to take their recyclables out to the bin corral, and actually tried to engage with the residents on a one-on-one basis. So in terms of the results, so I've got a table here that shows basically, excuse me, the effectiveness of each of the interventions against the targets we are measuring. So the improvement in contamination rate, the improvement to the resource loss rate, and the improvement to illegal dumping. Now, probably some of the highlights are these figures here, the improvement across the board for the last intervention, which was the door knocking, but also obviously per house that's far more costly because you're paying a human being to go out and spend time interacting with people. The most effective in terms of dollar value was the under the lid stickering, which I say everybody got. And the kind of weird one that popped up was that by putting bin lid stickers on the recycling bins, oh, sorry, it's in yellow there, we saw an improvement in the illegal dumping, and we really couldn't understand that, but from sort of talking to people, it was just by raising awareness that council were in the area and doing things with our waste and looking under our bins, and there was a kind of buzz around it. People kind of knew that what they were doing was wrong, and that reduced a little bit as well, which was a little bit surprising. So what all that meant was that we were able to obviously give this information to council and say, well, look, if you've got future multi-unit dwellings that you want to tackle, here's the actual cost of doing that. And what's happened now is we're just starting phase 2 of this programme, and because of the effectiveness of the door knocking, we've now employed 2 gentlemen from the Burmese community, because the next round of multi-unit dwellings that we're targeting are Burmese community, and we want to do the door knocking, and there's some funding available to do it, and we know that's the most effective, so we're going to get out there and actually talk to these communities through community development officers. So that's that one. The next one we looked at were our early learning centre kits, so entirely different altogether. This is a kit that EnviroCom designed. It's intended to be used by teachers and staff at early learning centres. It includes a series of storybooks, some posters, and a CD which contains some waste audit tools. It's been designed and developed by us after hearing from councils that demand is very high for waste education in early learning centres, but the cost of sending in our whiz-bang education consultants is prohibitive when there are so many early learning centres to get to. So we pulled this together, and it was a number of years in the making, probably before my time in EnviroCom. And the idea is that we'll bring teachers from early learning centres to a PD session, introduce the kit, run through how they can use it in their kinder, and then let them loose to go and deal with it. The CD includes a waste calculator that lets the teachers run a waste audit in the kinder if they wish to, and that's not intended for the kids to do, but for the teachers to do if they want to take that up. So the question here was, well, we run a PD session, everyone comes along, we hand out our shiny kit, and then everyone tells us it's wonderful, and off they go. But how do we know that that's been effective and that it's been used? Has it just been stuck on a shelf in the early learning centre, never to be opened again? So when we had the teachers out of PD sessions, we press ganged them into signing up to complete a survey in 6 months, and we've been working through all the attendees and sending out surveys. So I'm just going to give you, and we waited 6 months before we started engaging with them. So I'm going to give you a bit of a snapshot in terms of what was done, or what the responses were, just from some of the questions. I'm not going to go through the whole lot, it was quite a lengthy survey. So we've learned that 73% of the attendees are actually using the kit, which isn't bad, but it's also not that good because there's the other 27% are not using it. So we need to work out what's going on there, but at least they're not all sitting on the shelf. For those who did use it, we got ratings of useful and somewhat useful in terms of the bulk of our responses, so that's great. It's more than just something they've used, it's actually been beneficial. And then getting more into the sort of quantitative responses, 25% of respondents told us that they'd started a separate organics, to separate their organics from the general waste within the 6 months since the kit was provided. And we're able to estimate that's 4,000 litres per annum diverted from landfill, which isn't huge, but it's a start. And then, of course, on top of that, we also hope that those teachers and parents from those kinders and the kids, to an extent, are taking that messaging home as well and starting the same thing there. So we know that it's having some effect. Another couple of highlights. 45% of the responding kinders say that in addition to what's in our kit and in our little storybooks and posters, they had actually started to tackle other waste issues as well. So they're looking at heat and light and the use of paper towels and cardboard beyond what our kit actually goes into, which is more about composting and organics and actually recycling. So it's actually started to change behaviour beyond the initial intention, which was great. 100% of them said that the kit had assisted them to meet their early years framework, sustainability education and assessment goals, which was nice for us, pat in the back, but also really nice for council because it's helping them to tick those boxes under the national standard, and that's a real tool for council to be able to just tick that off. And then the last one, which is probably the disappointing one, only 29% had actually engaged with our waste calculator. So that's an opportunity for us now to go back and reassess and be honest and say, hey, there's something wrong here. But it also allows us to have a conversation with a client that says, hey, look, we think we can get more people engaged. Can we maybe run a competition between centres and get them auditing as well? So there's an extra extension of that. So the feedback, getting negative feedback really is got to be seen as an opportunity and an opportunity to rethink and have another look at it. This is ongoing, so we're still running PD sessions, we're still handing out kits. There are a heck of a lot of ALCs all over Australia that we can get to, and then we will go back and we survey them every 6 months and see how they're progressing. So it's very much a work in progress. And then this third example is around composting and worm farming workshops. This is from the Sunshine Coast. These workshops have been a feature of our education offering there for the last 4 years, so it's a fairly lengthy program. And again, with these ones, these are community workshops, free to the community, and we sign them up to do follow-up surveys post our workshop, and that's also ongoing, but it lets us every year run the program, assess how it's gone, and then give some feedback. Now, again, it's beyond just asking, did you enjoy the workshop? And I'll go through a couple of the highlights from this. This is a fairly obvious one. So before attending the workshop, were you composting or worm farming? And we've got 70%. So to an extent, you're preaching to the converted because you've got a pretty high compliance already. But 6 months later, that's increased to 90%. So yeah, it's been pretty effective. That's pretty good. And this is year 4 of doing it. So we're getting pretty good at delivering it and knowing that people will do what we want them to do. So then beyond the obvious, we also asked some questions which I guess let us as the experts, and I don't include myself in that category, assess how well it's going. So we asked them about the colour of the compost and the smell of the compost, how it felt in terms of its moisture content, and then what sort of volumes they were putting into it. So of that 90% who are now composting, and we actually asked these questions, which then allows us as the educator to assess the effectiveness of our program. We're not asking them, hey, is your compost been great? Let's be really specific about it. So around the question of colour, and those of you who are composters will know that a good compost bin is the colour of dark chocolate, so that was fairly successful, with 55% of those responding telling us, yep, it's a dark brown, black colour. So we got a good result. We know that we've got 90% of people at the workshop are now composting, and we know that of them, over half have got the right colour. Some need some assistance, and the other ones don't want to tell us, which, who knows? And then the same question around the moisture, and successful compost bin should be around the consistency of a sort of damp sponge. So probably the green and purple pieces of that pie chart suggest that we're doing well, which again is a pretty reasonable success rate. We're also able, through this questionnaire, to establish the volume of organics that the workshop attendees were now putting into their compost bin. So again, able to give council specific figures around how much of the organic waste has been diverted from the landfill stream. And again, with this is ongoing. We always follow up surveys on this one to understand whether people are taking things away and making things work. So, and I told you I'd talk quickly. In conclusion, it really is important that you do question your education and really understand with quantitative analysis how you know what's working. And there are many different ways to do that, and you've got to tailor it to whatever it is you're delivering to try and get some real hard data out of it so that you can have further conversations about future education or changes to the education you're doing. But the most important thing is that you do question and you do evaluate, just beyond saying, hey, did you have a good time at the workshop? And then you can continue to change things, tweak things, and demonstrate to your client there's a return on investment. And that's me. So do come and see me at number 37. There we are, and my details are up there as well. That was quite quick, eh? Thanks.